Philip Sheldrake, welcome. Philip, you're the author of The Business of Influence, you're managing partner at Euler Partners, and you also advise on the board of AMEC. What more can we say, other than that we're delighted to have you on Traackr's board as an advisor?
Likewise.
And perhaps you could just start by telling us, Philip, why? Why join Traackr?
Well, it's obvious that the world has changed, and we've used IT for the last 2 or 3 decades to track the flows of time, money and materials in business. Well, now what could be more important than understanding how influence goes around, comes around? And fundamentally, I like the Traackr team. So I think they could affect the change that will make organisations work better.
That's very kind, Philip. We like you too. How do you think Traackr can be relevant to brands then who want to move into the influencer space? What kind of makes Traackr unique?
Well, this is an interesting question. The clues in the question, I think, can move into the influencer space. To me, every organisation is already in the influencer space. If you're in business, you're in the business of influence. What they need to do is equip themselves with the tools, the workflow, the know-how in order to make that work to their advantage.
So where do you see the future of influencer marketing going?
Slowly at first, there's no doubt about it. There's no need to actually just rush into this space and disrupt everything. You have to explore this, understand what's possible first. Only if you know what's possible can you then challenge your organisation with appropriately powerful questions. And we always overestimate what we can achieve in the short term, but the corollary to that is we always underestimate what we can achieve in the long term. So with that long term in mind, the best thing to do is get cracking today. And continuing to necessarily divvy up the budget in the same way we've done so historically might not be the best way forward. Having said that, change always starts on one budget line. So you need some champion in the organisation to say, I'm going to try this and see what happens. I'm going to understand how to create the non-fiscal metrics that will go alongside it so that we can articulate both what success looks like and how close we are to achieving it.
How would you define influence in the modern organisation?
I don't need to define influence. The dictionary defines influence. You've been influenced when you think something you wouldn't otherwise have thought, or when you do something you wouldn't otherwise have done. And actually, when you recognise that today an organisation is literally the sum of everyone with a stake in that organisation's success. So think about that. That's more than just the payroll. That's everybody who has a stake in the organisation's success. How do we work together? How do we create mutual value faster than otherwise? To a certain extent, whilst efficiency is still important, it's been subjugated by responsiveness. Speed, responsiveness, agility is where competitive advantage lies today. And so, sensitising the organisation to influence flows is part and parcel of creating that competitive advantage through agility.
You first mooted the idea of this Chief Influence Officer. Where do you see the CIO fitting into the organisation? And how successful has that been so far? Are we seeing the Chief Influence Officer in organisations today? And what are they doing?
Interestingly, if you go to the entry for C title, I think it is, in Wikipedia, you'll see about 70 of these titles listed. So to a certain extent, my book didn't suggest that you should nominate someone as the Chief Influence Officer, but more used it as a construct to explore what that would actually mean. How would the organisation look at itself differently? And fundamentally, you can't, when you look at it through the influence lens, you don't see an organisation that's a command and control functional structure with a them and us attitude between the organisation and its customers or the organisation and its shareholders. This sort of departmentalisation. You actually see an organisation as an organism, or business as biology sort of metaphor come into play. It's all in the mix. It's how influence goes around, comes around. And by having the idea, at least, of a Chief Influence Officer, you start to think, well, what kind of structure, what kind of culture do we need as an organisation for that to be conducive to riffing off this intelligence, this unprecedented intelligence, to our advantage?
With your sort of measurement hat on, what are the sort of top, 3 pieces of advice, if you can sum them up like that, that you would give to companies who are looking to, start an influencer marketing measurement campaign?
But what AMEC's trying to do is reach consensus on how we can measure communication. AMEC, C for communication. It's not measuring and evaluating media, it's measuring and evaluating communication. That's the subtle difference, but important in this respect. Because what we need to do is, in the balanced scorecard sort of way, cascade down the organisation's vision, its overarching objectives, through to the strategy and the tactics, such that we can identify a balanced suite of non-fiscal metrics that will do one of two things. The first bit, it will tell us how well we are executing strategy, and two, it should tell us pretty darn quickly whether that strategy remains the right one. And so until you have that maturity in measurement, you won't understand either of those. Now fortunately, business performance management is at least 20 years old. Non-fiscal metrics are used throughout the entire facets of business. It's only latterly that the marketing functions and the public relations functions are, doing to a certain extent a little bit of catch-up. There's no reason why we couldn't take that bridge that the business performance management people have offered us and connect straight into it. And I like to see that Traackr is very confident in that capability.
Assuming over the course of these 10 minutes we persuaded some of our clients, prospects and watchers to start dabbling in influencer marketing, where would you recommend they start? What's the first step?
As I said earlier, it requires someone to recognise that the world has changed. And we can no longer have subject matter experts talking to the internal comms team, to talk to the public relations team, who talk to a journalist who writes something that someone we would like to read reads it. We can disintermediate that chain. We can make influence darn sight more effective. We can focus on getting the message in as much as getting the message out. And you can't begin that process without trialling it. So find the right people in the business who believe in that, find the right partners that can help you take the right steps in the right order, and just do it. That's all I'm going to say. Just crack on and do it.
Fantastic.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
I was looking at the no smoking sign over there, if only because I couldn't look at you. You're not asking the question, that's weird. But then there was one point where I did look over here, so I don't know if that would cause a continuation issue, but I'm sure
It's my AMEC issue that I realised the second I said it. AMEC, I said he's sat on the board and of course he's an advisor.
It's bloody written on there.
I know, I was just freestyling. Just in the zone.